Hello, Ashley. Welcome. That's your third meeting.
Yes.
All right. We'll do some paperwork at the end. Hello, Jason. All right, 7 o'clock. Please stand. We're good on YouTube, right?
Yep.
All right. I pledge the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Our heads. Father, we thank you for this past week. We thank you for the rain, but we also pray that damage will not be done for our nourishment. Be with this squadron. Give it safety of all its travels. And be with the CAP throughout California and the United States. We pray for this government for its right decisions. And give them guidance. And we thank our commander for the donuts. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, welcome everybody. The donuts is for the reason, as I mentioned before, I passed my instrument check right, so I'm a brand new instrument pilot. And I was tempted to fly my first real instrument flight this Monday actually, but it's this kind of clouds I wasn't comfortable with, so I decided to pass on it. The other update, I was telling some of the members who were already here that I received my Garmin NXI ESP practical training. So Garmin 1000 NXI is a newer revision of Garmin 1000 Glass Cockpit with additional features. Among these features, standard GFC 700 autopilot, synthetic vision. The GFC 700 comes with not just an autopilot but also a flight director, so it not only flies the airplane, but it can guide the pilot to fly the airplane in a desired altitude manually. And this particular airplane, like aircraft manufactured after 2019 and newer, with Garmin 1000 NXI, has ESP system, which stands for Electronic Stability and Performance, I believe. And that system actually forces the airplane to fly in its certified envelope in case if pilot gets distracted and maybe disoriented when entering in a cloud and whatnot. Basically, whenever aircraft exceeds the 30 degrees, well, between 30 degrees of bank and 75 degrees of bank, it can engage the bank adjustment, and from 50% pitch up and down, it can force the airplane to actually pitch up and pitch down to regain the desired altitude. So it was kind of interesting. I was, after watching the videos, I was curious to see why the training is required. Well, after flying it, I understand why, because you really don't anticipate anything from aircraft when you bank it at 45 degrees. When you do a steep turn, and that aircraft will apply the opposite force trying to level the wings out, and moreover if you keep holding the aircraft at an undesired altitude, it will turn on the autopilot, and it will level out the aircraft and fly straight and level. And one interesting thing, of course, it's not going to prevent flying into the mountain if mountain is in the way. So the pilot has to be aware of these capabilities and actually recognize what's going on. This ESP functionality comes into play only if you are not on autopilot. So basically, if you're hand-flying aircraft and you exceed a certain altitude, pitch or bank, it will attempt to correct itself. The other capability of that aircraft, which is worth noting, is a go-around button. So let's say you are on approach to land and you need to go around, you apply the full power and your finger lands on a little button right by the throttle, which will initiate the go around. What it does, it enables the flight director. It doesn't engage the autopilot, it just enables the flight director, which shows what pitch you should fly. And once you reach a certain altitude, 200 AGL for the autopilot to be engaged, you can engage the autopilot and then you can fly the missed approach, for example. So it's extremely helpful for single pilot IFR operations. So the good news is for the pilots who are checked out in G1000, you are not required to do an abbreviated Form 5 to get your NXI and ASP training. You just need to fly with a qualified G1000 instructor, CAP instructor, to get that kind of internal endorsement. So it's basically one page of the 71-1 standard, which describes the scenario for the training, and that page has to be signed by the CAP instructor and with your name and CAP ID and uploaded to your qualifications. So something for the pilots who go through onboarding to keep in mind. I asked the standardization officer if a non-qualified pilot can actually take NXI and ASP enabled aircraft for the mission, and the answer is yes, you can, but you have to at least go through the course on LMS, and you would have to disable the ESP. So the ESP by default is enabled in a system, and you can disable it once you power up the aircraft. But when you power down, it will enable itself again, so the next pilot is protected. That's the logic behind it. So if you are qualified in G1000 and the only aircraft option for you to fly is an XI, keep in mind you have to disable the ESP to stay within the requirements of Civil Air Patrol. Any questions on any of that? Okay. And the reason I actually decided to get that qualification, even though it's unlikely we're going to fly it, but myself and Chuck were selected for Hybrid mission for WADS, which is Western Air Defense Corridor training exercise this Thursday. And the only aircraft in our vicinity is 337 Charlie Papa, or CAP 433. So I was like, okay, I can pass on the mission, or I can potentially get trained and fly it without any concerns. So I was lucky. There was an instructor pilot at Whiteman Airport who agreed to fly with me on a short notice, and we did 1 hour training flight on Monday. Yes?
Any differences for the observer seat? Different as far as the radios?
No, it's pretty standard. It's straightforward, no quirks on that aircraft. It's 2 audio panel, one on the right seat, one on the left. And
as far as navigation and waypoints, pretty much?
Actually, the NXI is very cool because you can create a navigation plan on your iPad in ForeFlight and push it via flight stream directly to the navigation system, including user waypoints. So that's fantastic for observers. if you do your homework and you create your flight plan with all the waypoints in ForeFlight, just connect via Bluetooth to the system and synchronize flight plan back and forth. In fact, not just to the panel, but from the panel as well. Worthwhile, probably should we fly that mission, you'll have an opportunity to play with it and see what kind of CAP emergency services functionality is there in terms of creating different search patterns and whatnot. While I'm flying, it's gonna be about an hour and a half flight should we go for that mission.
Yeah, I did look at it, and there are some built-in search patterns and things that they've done.
A lot more advanced comparing to the standard 743 Charlie Papa and 887 Charlie Papa. All right. Speaking of which, from aircraft point of view, the situation didn't change much. As maintenance officer, I worked with another maintenance officer from Group 7 to make sure that all discrepancies listed in AMRAD have been addressed by leading edge avionics. And actually, on that other maintenance officer, there were a bunch of action items to close out some of the old discrepancies which were already resolved by other maintenance facilities. Looks like we have all the approvals to get the work done, and leading edge avionics is waiting for the parts. For 887 specifically, they will be replacing air data computer altogether, so they already ordered an overhauled computer, and it's en route. They were supposed to receive it today, and tomorrow I will bug them until they finish the aircraft to our satisfaction. But hopefully they'll receive it today, tomorrow, and install it, and then they'll be able to troubleshoot all the avionics related issues. And best case scenario, we may get 887 back in service this week, but most likely early next week, I would say. Zelda, which is 7598 Zulu, has a much longer list of issues, and some of the issues were addressed by the other shop at John Wayne, but not to full extent, so they transferred these issues to the shop in Upland at Cable, and hopefully all the issues will be closed by the time Zelda is out of that leading edge shop at Cable. But we are not getting back, hopefully. So far, we are waiting for 216 Charlie Papa, as previously stated. The aircraft is at Gillespie Field in San Diego. It's undergoing the governor and prop overhaul, which takes some time. An estimated timeline for that to be finished end of March. So best case scenario, we're gonna get aircraft transferred to us. The transfer has been formally initiated. We are not accepting it until we actually take possession of the aircraft, because we have to do the inspection on the aircraft. Hopefully that goes as planned, and I'll keep providing updates as we go. Any questions? All right. As we are preparing for turbo aircraft to be allocated here, we have planned the turbo ground training for those interested, and it's not only relevant to the pilots coming through onboarding, but also is relevant for the observers, because you will see some of the additional instrumentation right in front of your eyes, and it's good to have another set of eyes on critical parameters of the engine. So the training is scheduled for March 16th, which is the next weekend after this, from 9 to 1, I believe, or from 8 to 12. The email was sent by Terry Pratt. If anyone is interested, you are welcome to join us. Please email Terry Pratt so we can put you on the list. The the way the turbo onboarding works, you basically have to be, from what I understand, you have to get Form 5 in non-turbo aircraft first, then you have to get an abbreviated Form 5 in a turbo aircraft. An abbreviated Form 5 is just critical elements of operation with the turbo aircraft in flight, so and on the ground. For all the pilots, even you are not going through onboarding, highly recommend that ground training, just an extra piece of knowledge you may actually acquire through our missions. All right. I'd like, even though Terry couldn't make it again, but he did a few good things for the squadron. He cleaned up real good the hangar, maybe a little bit too good. But he also replaced a signage on the hangar and at the gate. So if you went through the nearest gate, you would see the new Civil Air Patrol sign, brand new actually, and also on the next to the hangar door. And previously, as mentioned, he did a good job painting the walls and doors and so on and so forth. Some of you guys actually imprinted the new paint on your clothes, so you certainly noticed that. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. For the electronic equipment we received from ESRI, I received the inventory labels, but I forgot them at home. So next time I'll come here, maybe we'll stay a little bit after the meeting and tag all the equipment which is required to be tagged, and basically whatever the logistics officer decided is worth more than $250 will be tagged. After that, we will select the equipment which stays at the squadron, and I will notify other units so they can pick up their share. Any other questions? Okay. So today we have our general topic is emergency services, and I was thinking about specific practical topic we can actually cover. And to make it interesting to everyone, I was thinking maybe talking about route planning, how it's done in ForeFlight, and demonstrate some of the advanced features ForeFlight offers for the pilots and mission observers. Unfortunately, Civil Air Patrol does not offer a free license to the observers, which in my opinion is a huge oversight. I think observers need ForeFlight at the same level as pilots, because by definition an observer is actually a mission commander. He is in charge of planning the mission and making sure we get to the point where we're supposed to be going, and planning the search pattern in a proper way, and communicating with the right people on the ground and in the air with different aircraft. But hopefully this situation will change, and maybe at least I requested multiple times to our Air Force liaison that they should consider issuing maybe at least on a somehow temporary basis a license to the observers when the mission requires it. So I think from here we can move on, and I can share my screen. Let's see how that works.
Isn't there a guest app for flight? There's a passenger app.
There is a passenger app, but that is very limited. All right, so what I'll do, I will connect. We'll see. first of all. So I'll transfer. I transfer to my iPad, and I'll be sharing my screen from the iPad. Now let's figure out how to do that and display at the same time. Okay, that looks like it works. All right. And I'll share it on Teams. Did it drop? It cannot display and no, I am here. Good. Guys on Teams, can you see my screen? Mike, Jason? Anyone?
I can see this screen.
Okay.
Is your mic on?
Yeah, it should be on. Hold on a second. It's not. There you go. Okay, now it should be fine. Can you hear me now? Mike, Jason, Maria?
Mario said yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so
Yes, I can hear you.
for those who are not pilots, this is maybe not obvious how this application works, but what we see here is actually VFR sectional view of the navigational charts. And since in most cases the search and rescue is done in visual conditions, this is what the pilot and the observer would see on their iPad or phone and whatnot. So having all the charts for the region at your fingertips is extremely useful, right? So we cannot even, it's very hard to explain how valuable this capability is unless you try and you work with paper charts first. So I got my pilot license in 2018, and I had to plan my cross-country flight with paper charts. That basically is very interesting exercise, and I do believe that every pilot should at least learn how it works and be comfortable with it. Highly unlikely people will continue using it, but people also should keep in mind that there is a legal way to fly with electronic flight bag, such as for a flight. You have to have a backup. The backup can be actual paper chart, or it can be another iPad, or even your iPhone, which is capable of running these charts. Now, it adds additional responsibility on a pilot to pre-flight this instrument, pretty much like you pre-fly the airplane. You have to make sure that the charts are current. So we go to menu and we go to downloads, and we make sure that all the updates are installed before we go on a flight, because these charts are expiring every month basically, and it's illegal to fly on expired charts. It's okay for the observer to use the expired charts as a reference for additional situational awareness, but these charts cannot be used for actual navigation.
In case anyone wants to look up the actual AC, on EFB usage.
Yeah, and AC stands for Advisory Circular. It's essentially a legal document which clarifies specific matters relevant to safety of flight, regulation, and so on and so forth. By regulation, we must use approved charts. And by regulation, we are allowed to use electronic flight bag, for example, such as ForeFlight. But ForeFlight is not the only electronic flight bag available out there. There are different vendors. Garmin Pilot, for example, is a quite popular flight bag, electronic flight bag, etc. So this circular specifically explains what steps pilots should do to be legal and fly it in a compliant way. Okay, the display fell asleep. Okay, so once we make sure the databases are current, we want to make sure that we have the regions we are using for planning purposes loaded into our flight bag. And the subscription level which Civil Air Patrol gives to the pilot essentially is extremely generous. So if we look at download section and select that region, we have obviously United States. So I currently have 17 regions loaded from the United States. We have full Canada, we have Europe, Australia, we have Latin America, and obviously we don't need most of it, or pretty much none of it, except for some of the United States regions for the purpose of Civil Air Patrol. And plus we have some Department of Defense stuff, which I totally don't understand why we get that, but nevertheless it's there. So it's called, the subscription level is called military bag, and how one can tell what subscription you are running, it's right here under the account. The current subscription is ForeFlight Military Flight Bag Performance Package. The value for this package is $300 annually. So the way I look at it, at least from the pilot's perspective, the dues we are paying are quite well justified by getting this kind of service at no cost. All right, so some of the useful features for planning purposes are relevant to configuration of the flight bag. And in the flight bag we have what's called like an instrument tape, let's call it. I don't remember exactly the term ForeFlight uses, but this tape can be enabled and disabled by a simple tap of a finger on the top region right above the map. You see this blue sign, and it's highlighted right now, and if I click on it again, it disappears. So we should look at right here. Okay. So when it's enabled, you see a number of parameters displayed on the bottom, and every pilot kind of crafts it to their own likings. Like what I really like to see is vertical speed. It gives me a hint when I should start my descent to the airport, and I look at if I see a number in vicinity of 500 feet per minute, it tells me I'm close enough to my top of descent point. It has distance to next, so if I have multiple points in my plan, it tells me how far I am in nautical miles from the present position to that point. And it shows me the distance to destination. It can show me the estimated time of arrival to destination in Pacific time. It shows my GPS altitude. It shows my flight time, the nearest barometer setting from the local airport, and you can tailor it any way you like. It's very easy and quite intuitive actually to change any of this parameter. For example, Sometimes I can, instead of ETI, the destination, I can show something else. For example, Zulu time. Okay, so that's many non-pilots have no idea what Zulu time means, but essentially it's a UTC time, and it's universal time for everyone to really know what happens when. The weather forecast, for example, issued in Zulu time, and many other aviation-related time and date is in Zulu time. And so on and so forth. So you can look, when you have this subscription, you can look at it and play with it and see what actually works in your favor. It can show ground speed, for example, and that's exactly how fast we are going over the surface, and so on and so forth. Other great instruments, since it's electronic flight back, right? So it's not only storing maps, it can store a lot of other information. Essentially, it's the way for you to organize your knowledge and your references. And I especially appreciated it when I was preparing for my instrument check ride. So we have this documents function in the flight back. And here under the documents, we have catalog. So there are some standard, they call it drives, which are available when you are connected to internet. So for example, you have very important for flight. Here you have all the reference materials, all the manuals relevant for flight. You have FAA. FAA folder essentially contains all publications, FAA issues. Like for example, AC 9178. So if you search for 9178, it should find it. 9178. I can find it. Let's see if I add AC to it. Well, I guess it's not all of the references present there, but we can try to find it. 91. Well, I can explain how you can put it there.
Actually had to import it, so.
Yes. So you can import it. So you find the required documents anywhere online, and you can airdrop it to your iPad or even upload it from your computer. So for flight license gives you an opportunity to use this subscription on multiple devices. So if my memory serves me right, it can be up to 3 devices at the same time. So if you exceed that limit, you have to deactivate one of the devices, sign out essentially from that unnecessary device, and log in on the one you want to use. So some examples in FAA folder, you will see the flight charts, the aviation regulation, Class B, enhanced graphics, a variety of handbooks, and so on and so forth. So you can pick and choose what you want to have on your in your flight bag when you are actually offline and in a flight, or in a remote location where there is no internet connectivity and whatnot. I have, for example, for Cessna 182, I have weight and balance information. I have a copy of a POH. I have a CAP 140 manual. I have under G1000 all the relevant documentation for G1000. And it's a lot faster actually to have access to all this information than to actual book. Especially if you are proficient using the information in electronic form versus the paper form. You can load additional charts. You can, for example, this is unofficial but can be used for situational awareness chart of Baja California, for example. You can load CAP regulations. You can, like this is, for example, Form 104. and so on and so forth. So here you have advisory circular 91, 92, etc. So you can organize any way you like. I have my GNS 530 reference materials here, and all of the binders which you see here you can create by yourself and tailor it to your own needs. Sometimes it's difficult to remember all the details about operations of specific equipment. We fly different aircraft, and you can create the binders relevant to each aircraft you fly in a very simple form. Any questions so far? Okay. So next, let's talk a little bit about configurations, useful configurations for type of operations we actually conduct. So when you click on More and in this menu, on Settings, and you can look at, for example, Map Touch Action, Bring Chart to Front. So it gives you an opportunity to actually see some of the legends. So since it's an actual copy, electronic copy of a chart, you'll be able to see the legend for the chart right there when you need it. Another setting extremely relevant to our operations is units. Let's see if I can find it. Units and time. Okay, so wind speed in knots, pressure is in inches and mercury. I believe this is default setting. But for CAP, our standard way to recall coordinates is in this form, in degrees, minutes, and decimals of minutes. So you may want to enable this setting so we have a uniform way of communicating coordinates between air crews and air crew to the ground and so on and so forth.
When you have, I have a question. When you're in with the counter drug missions and you're relaying information to the sheriffs, what format do they want to use?
Well, that's a good question. So I don't. It's been a while since I've been to counter drug missions. I believe it's in this form.
Yeah. It just seems like we always have to convert while we were over there.
So to avoid the conversion, exactly what you need to accomplish, you need to make sure that G1000 is configured to the same kind of annotation. Otherwise, if you click on G1000, the coordinates will come up potentially in a different format. So when you pre-fly G1000, make sure you set it up to match for flight, and you don't have to do the conversions in this case. All right. Another area which is useful from configuration point of view, you may want to tweak in these settings, which is for the screen view, right? So you may enable, disable certain elements on a map to offload the information there. For example, you may want to remove the place labels if you don't want them to be crowding your view. You may set different levels of cultural elements like major roads. You can show them or hide them. Urban areas, forests, national parks, etc., etc. It's really up to the form factor of your iPad and up to your preferences what you want to see. You can see different level of detailization for airports. I'm not flying a helicopter. The heliports are not useful for me, so I disable them from my view. Seaplane bases, I don't need them on my view. And the auto center mode, I prefer north up, but sometimes depending on the flight situation I change that, so I may change it to track up. So what the difference does it make? It's basically how the map is oriented versus your direction of flight. So in different scenarios, one way or the other is more useful. If you are approaching an airport and you want to report you're approaching from the west, from the east, from the south and north, north up gives you orientation basically in a space. But you ask a bunch of pilots what is the right way to do it, you'll definitely get into a discussion, sometimes completely pointless, because it truly is depending on situation, in my opinion. This tool is extremely powerful. Like, for example, it can calculate the glide distance and tell a pilot how far you can glide if a pilot is pitching for the best glide speed and if pilot configured the glide settings properly. Okay, so there are a couple of ifs involved. But if that is done right, there will be like a blue line, the cyan line around the airplane, depending on aircraft altitude. It will be showing where you can potentially glide to. Of course, it's for reference only, but in the crunch, it gives you a good assessment option what is in your range in terms of safe glide distance. And it's extremely powerful tool because you see how that distance is expanding high you get above the ground. So we say altitude is your safe cushion, right? So higher you are, more options you get, and that is extremely visual with this capability. And it can be disabled altogether. If glide advisor is turned off, then you will not see that option. Let's see. Hazards. Okay, so you can see what hazard advisory as you fly, and it will issue a warning when you get within the certain level of proximity to the ground or to different obstacles which are present on the map. So that's extremely useful feature, especially in rugged terrain, when we need to increase our level of situational awareness to the maximum extent. For the pilots, a great feature is a profile corridor. So what does it mean? Let me give you quickly an idea of what it means. So I have this route for potential WADS mission on Thursday. So let's see what happens if I set the altitude a little bit lower. And when I plan my route, I set a bunch of waypoints en route, and I click Profile View. And Profile View shows me what is my obstacle and ground clearance with given settings, with given altitude. So it shows me that I will clear the ground at 1,000 feet above ground, and I don't have any strikes. And my route corridor is 4 nautical miles. But let's see if I put, for example, a different route. So I clear this one, and I put Riverside to Palm Springs. Okay, so there are some mountains in the way, I know for sure. And if I set the altitude to, let's say, 4,500, will I hit anything? Oh, I'm pretty sure I will. Okay, so I have pretty bad clearance, obviously, right? So the highest point in route is 10,000 feet, and doesn't look like I clear it in any way. So what can I do to make it work? Well, I can put myself on some airway, for example. Let's see if it improves anything. Well, it improved it a little bit, but I'm pretty sure I'm clearing everything, right? It doesn't look like there is anything on my way. What's wrong with it? my corridor is wide. So basically this calculation is given for the large airliner, and it shows 4 nautical miles corridor, which is a little bit too much for me. So if I change my let's see. Yes, I can also do it from here. So the corridor activation is automatic, and I can set my width as small as 1/2 mile, and for a small aircraft is more than enough. But interesting enough, still shows that I hit something on the way, and I can see right here on route what potentially may cause a problem. So now it doesn't show it, but essentially it shows that I may hit some obstacles on descent. So I can fine-tune it by move my route around some specific waypoints. For example, if I go to Garn intersection, that increases my clearance significantly. So at this point I will resolve all my conflicts. So this kind of stuff is impossible with paper charts, because in a paper chart you get an idea how high you should be, but it doesn't give you that level of precision. So it's extremely important for the pilots and for the observers to get familiar with this tool, so you have now 2 sets of eyes on these powerful helping tools besides just one. What if pilot forgets to enable, let's say, what should I call it? The obstacles and other hazards, right? So if pilot forgets to enable hazards, then the system will not warn the pilot. In fact, there were incidents of that nature with Garmin 1000, which has collision, the TAS, terrain awareness, the terrain awareness system. And if you can disable it, because it could be annoying, especially if you're flying intentionally low to terrain, it continuously screams at you, you are too low, and so on and so forth. It literally does scream, right? So some people just disable it, and maybe a person sitting in the right seat is annoyed with all the red stuff on the map, and they just turn it on, but pilot was relying on that red stuff, and then the accident may happen. So the tools we use essentially are as good as the level of proficiency using these tools of a person in which hands this tool is. Something else I want to show, also very important. So you go to settings, and you can enable or disable the emergency services stuff. So by default, it's, by the way, disabled. So it's called SAR features, okay? So if I turn it off right here, I will not have under the layers my CAP grid as an option. That's it, it's gone. And if you just install this software on your iPad, you will not have any of CAP capability. So you have to turn it on. And it, by the way, depends on the level of subscription you have. If you have basic for-flight subscription, the emergency SAR services are not included in it. You have to have, I believe, intermediate level or the military bag, obviously.
Which one is given to us as a pilot?
That is military bag performance package.
So that's included?
Yes. Yeah. So now, if I click on layers, I have CAP grid. And as you learn about the search and rescue qualifications at mission scanner and then mission observer rating, you will learn how to actually take a sectional. And I have a few sectionals at home, plus we have a bunch of them here. It doesn't have to be current to practice with it, so all of you will take a sectional and actually put a CAP grid on it. based on the rules we have for creating that. So now I enabled the cup grid, and you can see there is a bunch of letters and the red lines all over the place. And if I get, for example, an assignment, we're gonna be searching, for example, LAX 231 grid right here, and it would be quadrant A. I know exactly where we should go. It's right here. That's the grid, LAX 231. And in the center of the grid is its name, and the quadrants are starting from the top left corner of the grid and going around in a clockwise direction. So now let's say you want to practice an entry to the grid at the south west corner of this LAX 231A grid. You can easily identify the 4 corners of a grid and create user waypoints and so on and so forth. That's a matter for specific training exercise, which will, by the way, will have the mission scanner and mission observer ground school in April, and we will be sharing all the details relevant to those qualifications at that time. I'll show you a few other interesting capabilities of this system. I can see, for example, well, I don't know if it's, let's see, radar. Do we have anything? Satellite, maybe. Yeah, so we can see the satellite imagery, and if there are any clouds, we will see the reflection, and the intensity of clouds will show how thick the cloud layer, etc. If there are any icing air mats, they will be depicted accordingly on the map. I don't see any right now. Turbulence and so forth. So it gives a lot of tools for situational awareness, for planning purposes. If there are high winds, you can see that. You can see the cloud tops at as currently forecasted. So you can see 4,000 at 5,000, no clouds right now. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to load. So you can see how the situation is changing from now 20 hours forward based on forecast.
Is that the maximum it can look forward 20 hours?
Right here, yes, but there are multiple other weather tools available here in ForeFlight as well, based on National Weather Services, which we can look at a separate lesson altogether. And obviously you can see traffic. The traffic right now is a feed from internet. So you can see all the aircraft in the area. It's a lot of aircraft, in fact. But when you are in the flying the airplane, you connect to ADS-B feed within the airplane. You get usually traffic in your proximity. And ForeFlight can also disable distant traffic, so it doesn't crowd your view. You can see NOTAMs, notice to air missions. You can see TFRs, temporary flight restrictions. So we have one temporary flight restriction, which is pretty much permanent, right over the Disneyland. And maybe you remember there was an incident a couple of years ago. There was a huge TFR over John Wayne, which extended all the way to Chino area in Ontario. And there was a pilot flying from Arizona who was going to Catalina. And interesting enough, he was flying VFR, but it was pretty much IFR situation. So he was scud running. He was flying under the cloud deck, not talking to anyone. He didn't check TFRs. He got intercepted and landed at Chino. He had a lot of quality time with law enforcement, I bet. So with this tool, it is like impossible to violate the TFR, because you really have to be blind or forget to enable that capability, so it should be always enabled.
Regarding the ADS-B, do you have to have a separate receiver, or will it be fed by Bluetooth from the G1000?
This is a very interesting question, a very good one, because every aircraft is different. Most of the G1000 aircraft we have built-in ADS-B, and you have to connect via Bluetooth to that aircraft once the G1000 system is up and running. Some aircraft don't have ADS-B, or maybe it's not working, so we as pilots have to check what kind of equipment we are flying and what capabilities it has. So many of CAP members, pilots, and observers fly with portable ADS-B receivers. And these portable receivers give the same kind of information, but keep in mind you have to charge it ahead of time or bring the external power supply of any kind to make sure it works continuously for the duration of your mission. Yes.
On that portable one, there's even one you can make yourself.
Yeah, I've seen the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, we went over that about a year ago.
Yes, so we had a session. Chris actually explained how to build one, what kind of resources you may look at, and I'm flying with one which I built myself in 2018. I upgraded firmware on it a few times, and every time I do that upgrade, I actually create a new SD card, and I load the new firmware on the new SD card, and I save the previous one just in case if the new firmware has some kind of bugs, I can go back to the known scenario when everything was fine.
And on the Raspberry Pis are actually available again.
Right. Yeah, so if you are looking to build one,
For about a year and a half,
there were shortages,
supply shortages, chip shortages.
and those which were available were like quite pricey, so it was better to buy a commercial ADS-B receiver than build yourself. And when I built my own, the total cost was $130, and that includes all the optional components and everything, and it works like a charm.
I think I saw yours on one flight. We were flying an older round dial airplane, and you got it stuck up in the window.
Yeah, so that one can be powered from the external power on airplane, or I typically bring a battery pack which lasts hours. Like on my trip to Oshkosh, I didn't charge my battery even once, so it consumes very little power en route. The good thing about ADS-B, it gives you additional tool, a situational awareness. The bad thing about ADS-B, it also creates a complacency. So some people like excessively reliant on ADS-B feed, and instead of looking outside, they look on the screen, hoping to see that traffic. One problem with ADS-B traffic, it's delayed by as much as 10-15 minutes in some cases. So sometimes that airplane is no longer there. It's right here in front of you. So
I'm honestly surprised the FAA hasn't mandated ADS-B.
it's mandated as a reporting device for ADS-B out. It's mandatory on all aircraft, with exceptions.
Right.
It's mandatory to fly in Class Charlie, Class Bravo airspace, but is not required outside of Class Bravo and Class Charlie airspace.
Right here,
Right.
that art says that's where you're required to have ADS-B on.
Right, but I mean, like here, I see all the time because I, just out of curiosity, I'll have a map up showing the ADS-B feed, and you're an airplane fly over the house, and there's absolutely nothing.
There's two things could be going on. Since it's not required in this airspace because it's less busy, most of the planes here, for example, will have it on there, but it's a retrofit, so they might not have flipped the switch, especially a lot of the student pilot planes. It's, for example, one of the ones that I fly for rent. The ADS-B is attuned to the position lights on which are not required during daytime flight. So you may maybe you may forget to turn those lights on, and therefore you don't actually have the ADS-B on. Now, sometimes the tower will give you a friendly reminder, hey, especially if you're going into the LA area where you're going to need it on, they'll say, hey, your ADS-B is not on. But if they're busy, when they have been very busy lately, they can't always do that. So most of them have a sign that says ADS-B is here, but that's one thing you'll see.
And there's also, I did a session a while ago. ADS-B is a lot more complicated than people think it is. They built the protocol to be very simple, but when you're in flight and you are participating in ADS-B out, you actually get more information from the system because you will get both ADS-B targets that are in the air with you. You'll also be able to get the ground feed that the FAA collects and sends back out through their ground towers. And ForeFlight actually displays this data when you're in flight and you're using an ADS-B receiver. You can actually see on the map there'll be a little white tower, and it tells you this is an ADS-B tower that you're receiving ground feed from. If you are not sending ADS-B out broadcast, you won't be able to get the ground feed. So there's a lot of little things that they don't talk about inside the protocol that can either make your precision better, and then you'll see, like for us, all of us aircraft owners, the other problem becomes most of us who can fly got the cheap $2,000 screw into your nav light option, but if it's in part of the system, the Garmin DX345 diverse antenna will cost upwards of $12,000. So, but that one gives you antennas up and down on your aircraft. You can pretty much see everything above and below you. It's the best way to go compared to my little $2,000 light bulb one. So, there's that's why we say don't be complacent with ADS-B because there are so many factors that you could not see an aircraft target.
There's a lot of airplanes that don't run it, at least from my observations, they don't run it. But it's amazing because the FAA, like for instance with drones, and I don't want to get off on a different tangent here, but the remote ID that they require for drones, there's no slack. Either you have it or you don't. And if you're non-compliant, there's a little tiny place over here that you can fly your drone, but otherwise you're done.
Well, a fun experiment, I did it once, and it's very interesting because you're a radio guy. Get an SDR antenna with a Raspberry Pi and just listen to the raw stream, and you can actually see the ADS-B packets as they hit your antenna. And you'll realize, like I said, that most aircraft, I would say the wide majority of them, are compliant. Because I live right next to Lake Matthews. You'll see the packets hitting all the time. There are various reasons why your ADS-B receiver wouldn't pick it up or determine that that's a target that it cares about. I did a whole session. I thought I could do another one on ADS-B because it's an interesting protocol.
That's an excellent education topic.
You really need it only for Class B airspace.
And class
In
charter.
some airports, if you don't have ADS-B, you have to notify the tower on takeoff that you don't have it, or it's inoperable to get released because they don't comply with it, especially like March. So we had one that was intermittent, and we just notified that it's intermittent. We got local with it. But basically, the ADS-B comes with a transponder, so it's built in.
Yeah, so I barely scratched the surface on capabilities of ForeFlight. Actually, it is so massive. There is a fantastic webcast going on. I believe it's in session 8 right now, which ran by very experienced flight instructor Barry Schiff. I believe it's Barry Schiff, but there are two Schiffs. One is older, one is younger. Anyway, for those interested, I can distribute the link to their webpage. You can see the whole history on ForeFlight. It is humongous in capabilities. And they touch topics such as route planning, situational awareness, they touch on weather flying, they touch on mountain flying, for airline pilots, for recreational pilots, and so on and so forth. So everyone will find an area which could be interesting for them. So I really recommend this resource. I picked up a lot of interesting hints and tips on how to create like a you can create a flight plan and store it and use it as many times as you want, but sometimes you need like a short flight here and there, like we are flying counter-drug mission. Okay, I just entered all the waypoints, all the user waypoints once, and I saved it there. And I can refer to it anytime I'm flying west or east route, and I don't have to spend a lot of time programming it every time I go. Or when I was preparing for the Oshkosh flight, I was terrified by the Fisk approach, and I looked at different options. How can I get there, and how can I safely enter from which airport would be a good staging area, and so on and so forth. So I saved multiple scenarios as a favorite, and it's not a full-fledged flight, but it stores enough information for you to really refer to it when you need it. So it's a great tool. Anyone who is interested in search and rescue and who is a pilot or who is planning to become at least an observer, I highly recommend researching it and maybe investing at least in a basic subscription at certain point, at least when you feel like you really need it. And meanwhile, we'll keep pushing for the observers to have the license, especially when we fly on certain missions at least. Maybe it will happen. Maybe we'll be able to get at least one license per squadron. We can share an iPad and pass it around and whatnot. Okay?
Is there a discount that they offer for that military flight bag version? So they won't do that?
I don't believe non-military personnel can buy it. I don't think so. I think they start asking for some credentials in order to approve it. The civilian flight bag at a medium subscription at a medium subscription level is quite powerful, and that is about the same $300 range, I think.
It's 20. I was just looking it up. The basic is 10, the mid range is 20, and then the advanced is 30 a month.
Right.
I was gonna say, yeah. I was like, that sounds low.
Yeah, they sell it monthly and annually is usually a little cheaper on a long run, but of course it's still quite expensive. But I have to tell you, it's less expensive than buying current charts.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so now the charts expire every like month and a half, I believe. So I had to buy just for my IFR test. I have to buy charts, and by the time I finally confirmed my test, the bunch of charts got expired, so I had to buy another set. It was expensive.
Since Boeing took over, you just can't buy California. You got to buy New Mexico, Colorado, and then it goes up to Idaho and Washington. So when you do that, it's around $565 for Jefferson now.
Yeah, and Jefferson is crazy expensive. So I didn't even look at that.
I've been. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I do like charts as my backup. I've had an iPad when I first got my first iPad. It would occasionally black out. Apple could not find anything wrong with it. I just get red and green screens, and you'd be flying along, and then all of a sudden you got nothing. And everybody would rely upon the iPad for charting. So if they were going to go from A to B, and it was 500 miles away, they'd end up with nothing. They'd be flying the Highway 99 if that was available to them. So I showed these people, they were kind of amazed that occasionally, the iPad may fail.
Yeah, it may fail, and it's good to have a backup. You have to have by regulation a backup, paper or another form of electronic backup. So keep that in mind if you
The
have
other thing
pilot.
I'll throw out there is you don't have to have the latest and this question a lot in the four-flag forums and the flying forums. Do you need to have cellular? It's not necessary. It's helpful to have a cellular connection, so you can do flight planning and stuff when you're on the ground. But your cellular connection is next to useless in the air. So that's number one. You can get a generation old or even a 2-generation old laptop, iPad, save a lot of money. And I have a second one that I carry in my aircraft, and like especially if I'm doing cross country, because I've had my iPhone and both iPads overheat. So it's a thing. It happens, and having a backup is definitely and we've done the encounter drug. I mean, it'll be 107 degrees in the plane.
Yeah.
You're
And a life hack for overheating. Okay. If you mount your iPad on a windshield or anywhere in the view where sun has direct impact on it, it will overheat. Even if you are flying in the current weather, but the sun is straight in your face, it will overheat. Very simple life hack. Just tin foil the back of the iPad. It works. Tin foil the back. It works 100%. I used it on my Oshkosh flight. I didn't overheat a single time.
Two things when I first address the overheat. Another thing that I usually do is, especially wearing tactical pants, I like to keep my iPad on my leg, like a kneeboard style, and I also on those really hot days will have an ice pack in my in the tactical pocket, which also is cooling the back of the iPad at the same time, simultaneously. So keep me and the iPad cool. The other thing on the models of iPads, the one, Chris mentioned the cellular thing. The main benefit of getting a cellular one isn't the cellular service. It's the cellular model has the GPS unit built into it that the non-cellular model does not have a GPS unit, so you need an external GPS. Now, if you build the Raspberry Pi type kit, then that covers that. Or if you're connected to the G1000 or another external GPS unit, then that's more accurate.
That supplements the GPS.
But, and if your Raspberry Pi fails, which mine has in the air, the iPad with GPS
has
is
a backup.
beneficial.
Yeah, and that works regardless of having a cellular service. In fact, my iPad had it for 4 years, 3.5 years now. It hasn't. I've never had a service on it, but it is cellular capable. So even right now, it'll tell me the GPS without anything else on it. The last thing on the iPad model thing too is I would recommend if anybody's getting one to get either to get one of the ones with the low glare screen. So the base model iPad, so just the one that's called iPad, has a very glary screen on it. The iPad Mini, I believe, has a low glare screen, and the iPad Air and iPad Pros all have low glare screen. Of course, the main thing is the Mini. The annoying thing about the Mini is they only sell that in I think a 256. They can go from like 64 gig, which is useless, to 256, which is overkill. They don't have the middle.
I can tell you it's no longer overkill. When you
maybe not
fly
anymore, yeah.
a little bit more distant, and if you load your flight back with a lot of manuals and stuff, you really start appreciating the memory.
Maybe it's 512. I forget what it is, but there's a big gap between the low end and the other entry. But
So do you suggest that size of iPad? I've got an older full size.
I can tell that I tried the large one, iPad Pro. I tried iPad Air, same size as iPad Pro, and I went back to iPad Mini.
If you're not flying, you could probably get away with a larger iPad, but just take in mind you're going to be space limited, so the minis are almost always a better option.
In my airplane, which is Mooney, space is scarce, and I was struggling with a 10-inch iPad in that airplane. Plus, when I started practicing IFR, I quickly realized that I used to fly with it in a kneeboard style, so I even got the mount, which sits right here. And once you start flying IFR and you start doing this, you go all over the place.
And
You have to keep your head straight and move your eyes. That's it.
it's also going to matter too is the what kind of like what kind of flying you're doing, and if you own your own plane, because when I'm renting, it's a lot harder to put. There's no way I can get a mount
No common mount, yeah.
that I can put there for yeah. There's some clever ones, but getting
Some
those
yokes have challenges mounting any kind of equipment, and it takes time to figure it out how you organize your flying office.
To his point, when I was training, once I got past the part where my instructor was fine with me using an iPad, that was the challenge. Is I carried mounts for every different type of aircraft that I flew because you don't know, and sometimes it doesn't stick on this particular one. Yeah, it becomes a thing. You have to, and like as an observer, you don't know which aircraft you're going to be in a lot of the times.
Right.
So when I'm kitting out for missions, I try to keep my options available. The other thing, and we're way over, but the other feature, the big feature that I use a lot in ForeFlight that as an observer you probably should use is checklists, because you can build your own checklist, and for pilots we build our own checklist for the plane, but we can actually put other checklists in there, like our communications checklist and things like that. We
Right.
can, and it's right there. It's all for you, and doing CD missions and whatnot. And then the fact that you can write on it. So when you're taking notes, you can write right on the map, and that's because a lot of times you will be looking at an object of interest and having to relay that back to base. And
Speaking of checklist,
yeah.
okay, so I created full copy of my personal aircraft checklist, and it's very useful, right? So you may display the checklist may be blown away by the wind. It's there. It's not gonna go anywhere.
Falls in the back seat. Yeah.
Fall behind the
Yeah.
seat, etc.
I've had that
So
happen.
it's extremely powerful. It takes time and
Yeah.
patience.
Yeah.
It's not the extremely user-friendly interface to build the checklist, but once you build it, you'll appreciate it.
Yeah, they don't let you. It's the one thing you can't do, or one of the few things you can't do from the web version of ForeFlight. Like you can't go to the web ForeFlight and build your checklist. You also can't import them. I think you can share them. I think that's it.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
But you can't share to yourself, obviously.
Very
Right,
strange.
you can share in the community, somebody has similar aircraft, or maybe we can create one for 187, 192, 887 and share it with all the pilots, this kind of sharing.
Right.
Actually, ForeFlight is quite good in sharing information. You can build weight and balance profile, you can do performance profiles, and it's fantastic in this case. From automation of pilot work is unbelievable. So we can go on and on. We're way past 8. I want to be cautious about everybody's time. So let's wrap. And we have something to talk about the week after next in the next emergency meeting. In fact, I hope, I still keep my finger crossed, but I hope to have one of the gold level CFIs to come and present either topic of ForeFlight, like professional use, or weather flying or mountain flying. So he will let me know. It will be actually wing fast credit. So for those who are pilots, you'll be able to actually log it as a qualified training.
Is this the pilot town hall?
No, the pilot town hall is on Thursday.
The reason I bring that up is because the mandatory air crew safety thing, I think, overlaps the pilot town hall.
Same day?
And it also overlaps the turbo.
That's on the 16th, right? The turbo grand is 16th. But I know that I thought I saw the pilot town hall.
Yeah, it showed up on my schedule as the same.
Okay. Well, everybody's online. Thank you very much. This wraps today's meeting. Have a good day.